Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS slate breakdown for Thursday, July 11th. We are here. We're going to be breaking it down. We have a 7-game slate. Starts at 3:05 Pacific time, 6:05 East Coast time. So a little heads up there. The slate is starting earlier than normal. Now come join us at LineStar. It's only $39.99 per month. Gets you access to everything we do. All the props, all the DFS. You get it all for one low price. Now let's get into the little slate here. As always, we will start with the perfect lineups from yesterday, and then we will jump into the winning lineups. And lastly, we will start with yesterday's slate, the pitchers to consider and stacks to consider. All right, yesterday's FanDuel perfect lineup, Framber Valdez. The guy went absolutely nuts. He was one of my favorite pitchers, and he showed up. Hitting-wise, yesterday was wild. So Milwaukee went nuts. Blue Jays went nuts. Angels went nuts. All the low-end teams really went nuts, or low-owned teams went nuts, not low-end. Perfect lineup hitting. Angels, we got 2, and then a bunch of one-offs. And then the winning lineup on FanDuel went to J-Love 48, who actually got first and second. And their lineups were very, very similar. Both of them were 4-4s, and both of them had Framber Valdez as the pitcher. The only difference, we got Rhys Hoskins versus Blake Perkins. So guy nailed the Mets. He nailed the Brewers and took first and second, 128K. Congrats, J-Love 48. You took it. Now let's move on to DraftKings. Get over to yesterday's slate. See what we got here. And we got Framber Valdez and Tobias Myers. Myers went 8 innings, 6 Ks, no earned runs at only 7,700. That'll do it. So we got Framber, we got Myers, and then 2-man Royals, but all one-offs from that. The Royals were not on the FanDuel slate, and they show up on the perfect lineup on DraftKings, as the team did put up 8. And then the winning lineup went to Shrek 42-24 with Framber and Tobias Myers. And then they had a good old 5-man Milwaukee stack, a 3-man Houston stack. Got it done. Very low-owned stack. I mean, Valdez was high-owned, but outside of that, it was pretty low. Every single hitter under 10% owned. That's just wild. That doesn't really happen that much. And, hey, Shrek got it done. Congrats to you. Love the contrarian play. And you were the winner. Now let's get into today. All right, so pitchers to consider here. All right, so we got Jack. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that last name. But he is making his major league debut here. He is the team's number 7 prospect. Hasn't really been that good in minors, but hey, he is only 4K, and he's versus a Seattle team that does like to strike out a lot. Almost a 30% K rate versus righties. Low WOBA. They do hit the ball hard. If he can, miss a couple bats so they don't hit too many home runs, then he's looking pretty good. However, Angel Stadium definitely has home run potential here. He's 4K. Makes sense that people are going there. I am not that surprised with him being high owned. And because he's only 4K, he's at least in consideration. I mean, it doesn't really take that much for him to get 10 fantasy points in this spot. So I get it. And now let's move on to Nasty Nestor Cortez versus Tampa Bay. 25% K rate. However, solid WOBA, solid ISO. Cortez is worse away. And then if you look at the near term versus lefties, Ray has been raking. 324 average, 286 ISO, 323 WOBA. They have just been absolutely crushing the ball. They are striking out more, 26% K rate over the last 20, but they've been hitting the ball very, very well. Kind of surprised to see Nasty Nestor this high owned with this form that the Rays have been in versus lefties lately. So it is a little warning there that maybe don't go overboard with Nasty Nestor. I think he's in a fine spot, so I don't mind playing some. He's clearly one of the better pitchers on this slate, but there's a lot of guys to choose from, and I don't think we have to go to Nestor. The 8.3 price tag is nice, but Rays are also in a decent spot here. Also want to bring up the fact the StatCast data, we do see some red, but really nothing is that alarming there. So he's been in decent form, 3.63 over his last 20, 3.12 over his last 5. Now, Brandon Pfaff. Pfaff is a pitcher that I like a lot. However, he is due for a little regression. 4.46 FIP over his last 5 starts, 3.89 over his last 20. He is a solid pitcher, but he is allowing a little bit too much hard contact, 33% hard contact, a lot of barreled balls, and it's against a Braves team that hits the ball as hard as anybody in the league. So a little scary here. He is much better at home, averaging almost 33% more fantasy points. This is one spot at 7.3K. I think you have to have a little bit of Brandon Pfaff, but I don't mind stacking some Braves either, just because we have seen when he gets lit up a little bit, he does give up 3, 5, 6 runs. And then if you can get into that bullpen, which isn't that good, a little earlier than normal, you can really do some damage against the Diamondbacks. So a little interested on both sides. Next, Tanner Houck. Once again, we have great hitting weather in Boston. Double-digit winds blowing out, mid-80 degrees. And Oakland strikes out a ton versus righties. Makes a lot of sense to go here. They do hit the ball hard. He may, let a home run or two go or a run or two go, but I like the spot for Tanner Houck. I don't mind having some, even though he is a little bit worse at home than he is away. All in all, I'm intrigued, and I think Tanner Houck should be a little higher owned than what we are currently getting for him. And next, we got Luis Castillo, 9.2K, 24% owned versus the Angels. I think it's a great spot versus the Angels. Now, he is averaging 31% less fantasy points away, but I'm still intrigued. I think that he is a very good pitcher. We have a real solid ceiling in this one, and he's probably going a little under-owned compared to some of the other higher-owned aspects or some of the higher-owned pitchers here. Definitely intrigued. There's nothing really that jumps out on this page to me where I have to play him or, I want to stack the Angels, but he is definitely a decent play, and definitely I will have a decent. All right, and let's get over to Justin Steele, who is back to being Justin Steele. I think he does have a very tough matchup, but we do got his birthday. Happy birthday, Jay Steele. You are turning 29 years old today, and you've been absolutely crushing the last few starts. 3.11 FIP over the last 20, 2.5 over the last 5, 25.6% K rate. He's pretty much back to being who he has been over the last season and a half. He struggled a little to start the year, but he's been rolling since, and even though he's in a tough matchup, I am absolutely willing to have some of him. He keeps the ball on the ground. I think he's going to limit home runs. And then it's also in that Baltimore ballpark, which just doesn't give up quite as few home runs. So I'm interested in Jay Steele, even in a tough matchup. There's some upside. Maybe, the mid-30 upside isn't there today, but I don't know if we really need that today. We have some good pitchers, but all of them are in tough spots. So if he can get me, mid-20s, I am happy with that at 8K and willing to roll with that. And I think he can, even in a tough matchup. Next, Aaron Nola, 8.6K in another very, very tough matchup, but clearly one of the better pitchers on the slate. We got him at 2.x value. Look, Dodgers are good versus righties. Not quite as good as they are versus lefties, though. But Aaron Nola rarely gets really blown up. So I think there's a decent floor here. However, versus the Dodgers, there just may not be a huge ceiling. And that's kind of the issue here. Now, his price is down to 8.6K, so maybe you can still roll with him. It is a little bit of a scary matchup, though, and I could see that one going both ways. I don't want to totally fade him, but I'm not pushing extra of him in. Next, Max Fried versus the versus the Diamondbacks. And Fried finally came back to earth a little bit. Has had a couple rough outings. Really, I mean, his last 5 have been meh after a incredible run that he had. Now he's coming into Arizona, who have hit him pretty well. He is, however, averaging 54% more fantasy points away. But Arizona, 54 plate attempts, 314. Only 2 home runs, but a 358 WOBA. I could see this one going either way. I don't mind having some Fried, but I'm definitely not trying to push extra of him. The thing is that the Diamondbacks don't strike out that much versus lefties. They hit lefties well. And Fried just doesn't have a ton of upside. I think this is a spot that he will struggle to get into the later innings, and that is when his ceiling comes into play. He needs to get into the 7th, 8th inning to really have his ceiling. The likelihood of him doing that versus the Diamondbacks, I think, is pretty small. So I'm not really loving Max Fried today at 8,800. Now, we do have him at 2.1x. He has a decent median projection. So I'm not going to actively try to fade him, but I'm definitely not trying to get more of him. Outside of that, we got Albert Suarez. He's been pitching decently lately, but I think some regression is coming for him, and I don't mind stacking some Cubs. Don't really love Suarez today. Shane Baz, when 92 pitches last game, had 6 Ks versus Texas and 3 runs. Now, Baz is a big-time prospect. The fact that he went 92 pitches is intriguing to me, and he'll be in the 90s again probably today. I don't mind at 7.2K hoping and praying that he can get over some Yankees bats today who have been a little cold lately versus righties. 222 average, 165 ISO, 307 WOBA. I don't mind hopping on that cold streak a little bit and hoping for some Baz magic now. Landon Knack, don't really love the spot versus the Phillies bats, even at only 7.K. Rodri Munez, don't really love going there either. And Luis Medina, I don't really love it. I do have to say that it is going to be Boston chalk once again. And Medina, 3.85 FIP, 3.73 over the last 5. His big time worry is that he just doesn't have a very high K rate. So there's not much ceiling there, and the Boston is just way better versus righties than they are lefties. So there's definitely some danger there, but if you want to leverage pitcher, he is definitely one to consider. Now, over on to FanDuel here. And pitchers to consider, high-owned Tanner Huck, 31%. He's versus Oakland. No surprise he's going high-owned. He's in a fine spot. Only big worry here is that, one, hitting weather, and he doesn't do quite as well in Boston as he does away. Luis Castillo, another guy that doesn't do quite as well away, but he's in a better spot versus the A's, who over the last 20 games haven't really been that that great versus righties. They did have a little breakout yesterday, but I just don't really think that's going to continue happening. And I do love the upside for Luis Castillo when he gets it rolling and against a team that can strike out a lot. Brandon Pfaff, 8.1K, 3.8X, 3.5 star alert score. I am fine going with Pfaff. He is better at home. Braves aren't the Braves of last year, especially with how injured they are right now. I'm willing to take some shots. Don't totally love it, but don't hate it. 9.5K for Aaron Nola. A little interesting at low ownership just because how deep he works into games, and he does it against, good offenses, so he can absolutely do it against the Dodgers. Not a very comfy spot versus the Dodgers, but it's fine. I don't mind Justin Steele. As I've said before, at 8.9K, I am fully willing to go there. And he is our highest value rating. At low ownership, I like it. Definitely going to have some. Nasty Nestor is fine if you want to go there. It is a little scary, but I'm going to have a little probably. And then Shane Baz is my super low owned dart throw if I want to go there. Let's get over to DraftKings and check out some stacks. Our good old stack attacks. We are going to start with the highest ceiling play of the day and see who that is. All right, highest ceiling, no surprise. It's Boston. They're also going to be one of the highest owned, I'm sure. First, Luis Medina, they just crush righties, so no surprise that they are higher owned. Baltimore versus Justin Steele. I really don't like that spot for Baltimore. However, it is Baltimore. They can literally hit anybody. Same with Dodgers. So let's check out the highest owned spots we got here now. And Seattle, wow. I guess it's not that surprising. You got a guy that hasn't really been that great in the minors making their debut against Seattle. Seattle's been hitting a little bit lately. They went nuts on the Padres. Lost Eli and I both the GPP the other day. All in all, though, I get why people are going to Seattle. However, I do think Boston should probably be the highest owned. Houston is up here also versus Roderick Munez. Makes a lot of sense there. Munez has big-time splits, so if you want to pick on him, you should probably lean into those splits a little bit. Boston's popping up a bit as well. Now our highest projected. Our highest projected, we got Boston all over that. Like I said, I think Boston should probably be one of the higher owned stacks. Surprised they weren't before. Maybe they end up being before Slate starts, but they're in a good spot. Good hitting weather. Dodgers versus Nola. Dodgers can get to anybody. Houston, pretty much all of the same. Let's click value to see if we can see some more differences over here with the value side of things. Oakland versus Tanner Huck. Tanner Huck struggles a little more at home, has a 5.19 ERA over his last five and a 4.15 FIP. That magical run that he's had since the start of the season, is teetering a little bit. It's not quite as good as what it was. So if you want to take some leverage, I get it. And Oakland bats, they do have some pop. He can hit a couple home runs, and that does look like it is the super high owned or super value play of the day. Is it's the only one really popping up. Now, if we click on the teams, we got Boston 5.6 implied total, so 0.7 higher than anybody. Philadelphia is next versus Landon Knack, who's just been getting up hard contact, high average exit velocity. Could be some home runs there. Houston looks pretty interesting. The bullpen behind Munoz, who Munoz isn't great, is bad. So Houston makes a lot of sense. Seattle, 4.7. We don't know much about Jack here, but we do know the bullpen behind him is bad. Baltimore is all the way at 4.6. That is going to keep Justin Steele's ownership down. I'm interested in Steele. I think he can do well even against the Baltimore team, and he's just in great form lately. Tampa Bay is a very interesting one. Just they have been crushing lefties lately and probably go a little low owned in that spot. So definitely intrigued to go there. And that'll do it for us today. All in all, I think it's an interesting slate. Good luck, guys. Let's make some money, and I will see you guys back tomorrow. Peace.